Okay, hi all of you. So, we are studying some of the approaches to understanding personality, and we have already covered the Sigmund Freud's theory of psychodynamics. We have covered the behavioral approach, and we have covered the humanistic approach. Today, in this video, we are going to be talking about cultural approach to understanding personality. Okay, so cultural approach to understanding personality actually pays a lot of importance to understanding how the culture in which we are born has an effect on the way we behave and in turn our personality characteristics. Okay, so right from class 11 onwards, again and again we have been going back to understanding how does our culture have effect on our various psychological traits. For example, in the last chapter we studied how culture plays a very important role in determining the type of intelligences that is inculcated in an individual. Remember how we studied about technological intelligence, which is seen in the Western and more developed nations, as compared to the integral intelligence which is seen in Indian culture and many other Asian cultures. Okay, so when we're talking about personality, we'll see you'll be able to correlate something similar happening when it comes to understanding the effect of culture on our personality. Okay, so from now onwards, till now onwards, you must have already understood what exactly is culture. Culture incorporates everything that is surrounding us in our environment, right from the clothes we wear, to the food we eat, to our education system, to our religious practices, to the sports we play, to parenting practices, child rearing practices, to our beliefs. It affects our judgments, the way we perceive things. So culture has an effect on all such things. Okay, and basically collectively all these things are in an environment, are basically what forms a learning environment for an individual. So a child right from the beginning is growing up surrounded by these various things, and this is the environment in which the child is developing and learning how to respond to various situations and stimuli. So of course the environment is going to have a very important effect on how the child, when he or she, by the time he or she grows into an adult, learns to respond in certain ways. Okay, so the ecology, for example, I'll tell you an example. Something so simple as the climatic conditions of the place that a person resides in not only determines the way people, and availability of food, what kind of availability of whether it's a hunting and gathering societies or it's an agricultural society. So availability of food and climatic conditions can affect not only just the economics of a place, but something like the division of labor that happens in the society, the stratification in the various hierarchies, social stratification that happen, child rearing practices, parenting practices. So all these things ultimately finally play a very important role in the personality that develops of an individual residing in that particular culture. So I found it very interesting, but it's a well-known research. It's a fact that has been proven well-known by research. People who live in cold climatic conditions, hilly areas, and the countries which are actually having colder temperatures, weather conditions, they are known to be much more docile and simplistic. And on the other hand, people who live in hot countries, okay, tropical regions, they are known to be more short-tempered and aggressive. Okay, so I don't know if you've visited hill stations. I don't know if you've ever felt that people who belong to those hill stations are actually quite simple, humble, very docile kind of people. Okay, and people from tropical regions where it's very hot, there you will feel a lot of people, they are more aggressive. Okay, hot-blooded, that term comes from there, right? Hot-bloodedness, aggressiveness, short-temperedness, it's generally seen in people who come from societies which have got very hot climatic conditions. So that's one example of how something so simple as weather can play an important effect on something so huge on your personality. Okay, so let's talk about some other ways in which culture can play an effect on our personality. So there's a very good example that's given in your NCERT book, and that's the example of tribal societies. Okay, so a tribal society in Jharkhand, I think it's the Borean society or something like that. So they are basically tribal society, and the people of this tribe, they live in the jungles, and they are nomads. So nomads are people who do not settle down in one place. They keep moving from one place to the other. So these people, this tribe, it keeps moving from one forest to the other, and basically it's a hunting and gathering society. They survive on hunting other wild animals and collecting other products of the forest like honey, mushrooms, fruits. Okay, so the children that are born and brought up in these tribal societies, right from the beginning, they are taught values like learning to be independent, autonomous, make decisions for yourself. They are left to roam around and explore the forest because they are not going to survive if they don't learn that right from an early age. So these children grow up. What kind of personality characteristics do you think will be dominant in these children by the time they grow up? These children become very independent. They are very good at making independent decisions, risk taking, judgments. Okay, they are independent people because these are the characteristics that are needed to survive in that kind of a cultural environment. Compare that to a very docile agricultural society where people are settled in one place and they form a society, and so in that kind of a place, the children who are brought up in agricultural societies, they are taught values like respecting their elders, okay, and giving love and warmth to the youngsters, and probably they are taught to depend on each other socially and cooperate with each other, because that's the kind of behavior you need if you want to survive in an agricultural society. Okay, so can you compare an adult who has been brought up into the tribal society of Jharkhand, independent, aggressive, autonomous, very good at judgment, risk taker, as compared to a child who has been brought up into a docile agricultural society? Okay, a very sociable person, a kind of person who has learned to depend on others, ask for help and give help whenever needed, knows the values of respecting elders and giving love to the youngsters. So it's more of a communal, you help me and I'll help you kind of a personality. Okay, so our personality, basically cultural perspective, shows us how our personality and patterns of behavior emerge in response to whatever is needed to adapt to our physical environment. The physical and the ecological environment that surrounds us, including the weather, the topography, the flora, the fauna, whatever are the demands of the environment around us, whatever is needed to survive those environmental demands, our behavior and personality characteristics, they evolve and adapt to survive best in that kind of environment. Okay, so what kind of personality will develop actually depends upon what kind of environment you are going to be brought up in. So that is the cultural perspective. Okay, so if a question comes about explain how culture plays a role in developing personality of an individual, you can take examples of these agricultural societies versus a tribal society, and how actually culture involves everything from the food you eat to the practices, religious practices, you incorporate yourself into the way you perceive things, to the judgment you made. So it's your entire learning environment. So all this in learning environment cumulatively has a very strong effect on the person's behavior. Okay, and how the personality develops in response to whatever is best for a person to adapt to the ecological environment he or she is surrounded in. And then you can give the example of different societies and how people who are brought up in polar opposite societies actually have polar opposite predominant personality characteristics. Just like the example of the tribal society and the agricultural society I have told you. You can even compare Western societies and Asian societies like Indian culture. Okay, so the culture of the West and the more developed nations is completely different from the culture of the many Asian societies. Individualistic versus collectivist cultures, right? So a person who is going to be brought up in a more individualistic Western culture would develop certain aspects of his or her personality, like being more independent, thinking about themselves as an independent person and giving more importance to themselves. Okay, they are more competitive, and all those characteristics that we have talked about before, they form characteristics of individualistic society. So people who are brought up in that kind of culture automatically imbibe such kind of individualistic characteristics into their personality. Okay, as compared to a person who was born in a collectivist society where relationships and family values are given more important, so those kind of values and personality characteristics are automatically absorbed and imbibed into the person's characteristic. Okay, so definitely culture plays a very important role in determining what kind of personality characteristics would evolve in any given adult. Okay, so I hope you have understood what an important role culture plays in developing personality of individuals.